full screen in the slide mode?
Okay. Is it okay now?
Not yet.
There must be some network lag then. Is it okay?
No, sir, it is not still coming on the slideshow mode.
I've done it in slideshow mode. So let me just share it once again. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir, your screen is being presented. Yeah, now it's okay, full screen.
Is it moving?
It's moving, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. And sir, one more query. Would you like to handle or at the end of the session?
Sorry, your voice is not audible. It's cutting.
Sir, I'm
Hello.
asking, hello?
Ah, yeah, please.
Yes, sir, I'm asking, would you like to handle the questions in the middle or at the end of the session?
Anyways, I mean, I'm comfortable in both the ways. If they want to interrupt me in between, they can interrupt, or if they want to ask in the last, then they can ask in the last. There's no problem.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So, guys, good morning to all present. And I'm going to present the AI applications in power system planning. So, we know that AI is now coming up in a big way, and we all are very much aware that from in the next decade, AI is going to be the big industry, and it is going to be the industry which is going to provide most of the jobs to the technocrats or managers and everybody that you can think of, right? So we are going to focus on that. What will be the application of artificial intelligence in power system planning? So this will be the outline of my presentation that I'm going to deal. So I'm going to take you through that. What is AI? How the AI has evolved, and what is the current scenario of renewable energy in India. And then I'll be focusing on electricity market. So I'll be dealing with the price forecasting using the AI techniques. And I'll be telling you that what are the different models that we have used in forecasting the price in the electricity market, right? So if we talk about power system planning, then we can distribute the power system into three broad categories, and they are generation, transmission, and distribution. So generation planning essentially consists of forecasting of the loads and to decide the relationship between the capacity, reserves, and the reliability. Then capacity resource planning. Similarly, transmission planning deals with the stability of the overall system, because you need to transmit the power from one end to another end. So it basically deals with the rotor angle stability, small angle stability, transient stability, voltage, and frequency stability. And the last is distribution system planning. Distribution system planning is again forecasting of the load, planning for the reliability, and distribution system engineering. The difference between the generation planning load forecasting and the distribution load system planning load forecasting is that when we forecast it for generation planning, we need to increase the generation capacity based on what will be the growth in the overall peak for a longer duration, overall demand for a longer duration. So it will be a forecasting which will be a long-term forecasting based on, say, several months or several years, so that we can decide that the overall load is going to grow at a pace of, say, 5%, 10%. So we need to increase the generation in that particular ratio. But when we do it for the distribution system planning, it's a day-to-day management kind of thing. So we need to decide that how much generation is there, how much demand is there, and what are the different means by which we can meet the demand, right? I'll tell you that what will be the importance for these two forecasting techniques, right? Okay, so these are the traditional and emerging practice in the capacity planning. So traditionally, we have seen that how the power system works is that we see the energy growth, then we find out that what will be the peak load, and we plan our generation and transmission according to that. We keep on adding the renewables to decrease the cost of electricity, decrease the carbon emission, and integration cost of the renewable with the grid. Now, what is the emerging? The emerging is that we again look at the energy growth. We keep on adding the renewables, but we also characterize the variability. What is this variability? Variability is essentially that we need to know that how much renewable power is available at any point of time. Say for today, if we say that it's raining for last 2 days in Allahabad, so if you just look at the solar power that is being generated because there is no sun for last 2 days, so the solar power would have come to the minimum. So we need to, in order to maintain the reliability of the system, we need to maintain the stability, we need to increase the generation by other sources, right? So we plan the generation and transmission according to that. And there is a feedback which again goes to the adding of renewables part, and we keep on modifying it, that how much renewable we need to integrate and what is the current scenario. And all it leads to lower cost of electricity, then lower carbon emissions, and integration cost is reduced, right? Now, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence, I hope that you must have been listening for last 5 days, so I need not to explain all these things, but it's a big umbrella under which you find the techniques like machine learning, deep learning. They all are embodied in the term AI. So once we say AI, it's a bigger umbrella which takes care of all the tools and techniques. So neural network, fuzzy, expert system, they all are the tools of artificial intelligence by which we actually apply the artificial intelligence for any given problem, right? So this is how the artificial intelligence has grown over the years, or this is how the name has changed over the years. So it started in 1950s with the engineering of making intelligent machines and programs. It started with making intelligent algorithms. And in 1980s, it started to move towards the concept of machine learning, right? And currently what we are seeing is that we're seeing the use of deep learning algorithms or deep learning neural networks in most of the application that we see around for the artificial intelligence. Guys, am I audible? Am I clear?
Yes, sir, you are loud and clear.
Okay, and do you want me to slow down a little bit if I'm going at a fast pace?
Yes, sir, if I'll feel so, I'll interrupt in between.
Okay, okay. You do interrupt me, okay?
Okay, sir,
So
sure,
now,
sir.
what are the different industries that are impacted by the AI revolution? So if we look around, we see that most of the industries are now impacted by the artificial intelligence and the revolution. You can take it from construction to retail, cybersecurity, healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, education, information technology, supply chain. So there are a lot of industries which are being impacted by the AI nowadays. So power system is also one of them, because we rely heavily on electricity, and we have seen it in the pandemic that whenever we are at home, we're actually totally dependent on electricity. We are dependent on the network. We want to connect to our offices. We want to connect to our students. So again, power system is not an area where you don't find AI application. It is also coming up in a big way in the power system. This is the slide telling you that these are almost 100 startups which have started in last few years, and in different areas. So you can see that the AI is there in vision, auto, robotics, cybersecurity, business analytics, commerce, IoT, everything that you can think of. So these are like 100 startups, 100 main startups that have started in last few years, which cater to the different industries. And this is the status of AI with reference to the market, with reference to the market growth. So you can see that in 2014 and by 2025, how much market capacity AI will have in US. I mean, how much business AI will bring to the market in terms of million of dollars. So it is growing at a very rapid, fast speed. So now, what is the exposure of artificial intelligence in power system? How do we say that we apply AI in the power system? So Particularly, we have put emphasis on artificial neural networks, fuzzy logic, and expert systems, and they're used in these different fields. So they're used in economic load dispatch, generation and operational planning based on load forecasting, optimization of hydrothermal generation scheduling, capacity planning, control of voltage and frequency for system stability, sizing and control of FETs devices. Then this is the area, and the next one that we are going to deal in this particular presentation is analysis of electricity market and strategies for bidding. Right. So now I think you all know that we are living in the world where the market is deregulated, or the electricity is now a deregulated industry. That means it is not a monopoly now. It is not in the hands of government. It's more of like industry in which the private players are also allowed to participate. So how they decide their strategies, how they do use the AI, or how do they use the forecasting for designing their bidding strategies. Then automation of power system restoration and management, fault diagnosis, planning, demand side response and management, which is now again a big area which is coming up. Earlier, the demand is considered as a inelastic. That means the demand is fixed. We need to vary the generation according to the demand. So what happens that we know that this is the demand, and this is, we keep on adding the generation so that we can meet the demand. But now the demand is not considered as inelastic, rather than it is considered as flexible. So what we do is we keep on varying the demand also with respect to the generation. So we say that in the markets of US or in European markets, what they do is they don't use the electricity, or they don't do things which are not essential during daytime when the electricity price is very high, because industries are operating, offices are on. So they do use the they plan their load according to the price. So this is what we call as demand side response. I'll not go in detail because it's again a broad area. And last is the operation and control of smart grids. You know that the grids are now becoming smarter. So the AI is also helping in the operation and control of the smart grid. This I skipped. Okay, so I just want to tell you that what are the patents that are being granted in AI in the power system in the last few years. So you can see this graph. It is in the year 2000. You can see that less than 50 patents were there. And by year 2018, the number of patents which involved AI in the area of power system has grown up to 300 or more. Right, it has come down due to pandemic. So by 2020, you'll see that it has come down to something around 240 or something. But again, this graph is going to go up in the coming years. That means you'll have more and more AI technologies which are being applied to the power system, and people are going to apply for the patents, and they are going to get the patents in that particular field. So AI is going to come up in the big way in the area of power system as well. These are some of the industries which are working in the area of power systems. So I'm not going to discuss that. Now, this is the India renewable energy sector at a glance, and I know that we all are aware that India has a very ambitious mission of increasing the renewable capacity to 175 gigawatts by 2022. So this is the current capacity. So you can see that the installed RE capacity in gigawatts is now 92.54 gigawatts. And the percentage of share in renewable energy generation has increased from 5.56 in 2014-15 to about 11% in 2021. So within a span of 6 years, you've seen that there is the percentage has almost doubled. Right. So in the coming years, the use of renewable energy and the integration of renewable energy is going to increase in a rapid way. This is the wind energy scenario in India. So I'll skip that. You can see that this is state-wise capacity, that how the wind energy is being generated across India and the different states. What is the importance of forecasting in power sector? Once we look at forecasting, then what is the importance? Why we need this forecasting at all in the power sector? Right. So the forecasting is required for making the operational decisions. You need to decide whether you need to operate that particular generation unit or not, right? So, for example, in countries like France and Denmark, where the wind availability is very high, they have seen negative pricing. That means in night it occurs that the wind energy becomes so high that the prices go negative. The electricity prices go negative. That is just because in the night there is no demand, right? The demand reduces and there is a lot of energy available because of availability of the wind. So the prices go down. So what they do is they encourage people to use electricity at night time so that they can manage the high generations, right? Then the production cost, we need it for deciding the production cost. We need to decide that what will be the cost of electricity in the next hour, we need in the next few minutes, and so on. Unit commitment, reduced power curtailment, reduced requirements for spinning reserves, efficient electricity market trading, reduced energy storage sizing. What is energy storage? When we use renewable energy, we know that the renewable energies, once we use a renewable energy, we know that it is highly variable. If you talk about wind, if you talk about solar, they are highly variable in nature. So we use some kind of storage along with that to make sure that whenever the excess electricity is produced or whenever the excess energy is being generated, it is being stored in the storage system. But that storage system is very costly. So we need to reduce the storage size, we need to make it optimal so that we don't increase the cost of generation. Then we can plan the scheduling, operation and decision making, and it is efficient in erection, operation and maintenance of the plants. By forecasting, we know that we need to increase the generation capacity, so we know that what are the different generation plants that we need to come up with, how we are going to increase the generation, the electricity generation for the in the future. So now coming to the price forecasting, as I've already told you that in the year 2008, government, in fact, it started in the year 2003 when the Electricity Act was introduced, and in year 2008, the first electricity market of India was introduced with the name IEX, that stands for Indian Energy Exchange, and the motive is that energy was now deregulated. It was not under the monopoly of government. So you can see that the electricity, when the electricity market is there, that means we can purchase the electricity from that market, and we can sell the electricity to that market. But then when we are going to purchase the electricity market, we need to know that what is the cost of electricity that we are purchasing. Similarly, when we are selling the electricity to the market, we need to sell it at a cost. So the generation companies which are selling the electricity in the market, they need to have a cost, that how much rupee or how much per unit cost they will charge for the electricity. Similarly, the distribution companies which are going to purchase electricity from that market, they need to know the cost, that they will purchase the electricity at what cost. So the cost is actually not constant over the period of time. It is varying. It varies with what is the load, current demand. If the demand is very high, then the prices also go up, and when the demand comes down, the prices comes down. It's a very simple concept. So you can think market as of a place where there are buyers and there are sellers. So the buyers will purchase the electricity and the seller will sell the electricity. So they get the market operator, which is operating the market, they get the bid, and from that bid they make a supply demand curve and they find out the market clearing price. So that market clearing price is actually the cost of electricity at that particular hour, right? So we need to know, the generation companies are interested in knowing that what will be the future demand. They need to forecast the demand and they need to forecast the electricity price so that they can sell their electricity at a higher rate, because ultimately generation companies want to have profit. Similarly, from the seller point of view, what they want is they need to know the demand and they need to know that how we can get benefit by purchasing the electricity at a lower cost. So they need to know the correct demand and they need to know the electricity price as well. For example, what they'll do is they'll do the load forecasting and they'll see that the demand is varying over the day. So they will make it in terms of say some hours or minutes, and then they will see that in that particular duration of 15 minutes or 30 minutes, what will be the demand and how much electricity is required, because they don't want to purchase electricity which is in abundance. They don't want to waste energy. So this is how uh, the price forecasting has become important, or in fact I'll say it has become really important from the market point of view, because the generation company wants to know it, the distribution company wants to know it, and at the same time there are some people which are providing the ancillary services, what we call as reserves, right? If I'm a company which is providing an ancillary service or a reserve, then I need to get the money also, because I'm running a company. So I'm also interested in knowing that what will be the electricity price. So if some generation company fails to provide the electricity that they have already promised, then the ancillary services come into picture and they are being asked to provide the electricity, right? So they need the cost for their electricity. So that is how there are different market players, there are different persons who are involved in the market, and they all rely on two things, that is demand forecasting and price forecasting, so that they can get benefit from their electricity production, and at the same time the consumers are interested in purchasing the electricity which is at lower cost. So there are two kinds of price that people normally look for. One is market clearing price, right? And second is locational marginal price. I'll not go in detail because that will take the presentation in some other direction. So locational marginal price is actually the price which is considered with the congestion, right? I hope you all are aware that India is now one grid, one frequency, right? So from north to south, from east to west, we are now connected. So we can transmit electricity from north to south, east to west, right? So locational marginal price is the price with taking congestion into consideration. So um, this is actually considered when there is a transmission congestion. Otherwise, markets are normally considered about the market clearing price. Now, why it is difficult to forecast the electricity price, and why a lot of AI techniques are being applied in forecasting the electricity price is because it presents the characteristics which are not common with other time series, right? For example, it has got high frequency, non-constant mean and variance. That means it's not stationary. Multiple seasonality. Seasonality means the demand keeps on changing with season. When there is a cold weather, people don't use air conditioners, rather use heaters. And similarly, so with seasons, the price keeps on changing because demand keeps on changing. Then you have got calendar effects. Calendar effect means we have holidays in which the electricity demand goes up, the price goes up, and so on. And last is high volatility. Volatility means that the prices can increase tremendously within few seconds, a few hours, a few minutes, or they can drop drastically. So this variation in price is very high, which is called as volatility. So we need to capture all these things. So there are traditional methods and there are AI based techniques. The traditional methods are not capable of capturing all these characteristics of the electricity price. Rather than we use some AI techniques to capture all these characteristics so that we can get accurate value of the forecasting. Forecasting, I hope you all are very aware about forecasting because we are using it in our day-to-day life. Like today, if you look at the Google weather is there, or AccuWeather is there, which gives you information about the weather for the next 7 days. So once you know that tomorrow it is going to rain heavily, then you plan your activities accordingly, right? So similarly, once the companies know about the future values of price, the demand, they can plan their activities, they can plan their generation accordingly, right? Now, the accuracy. Suppose if tomorrow Google tells me that tomorrow it's going to rain heavily, I'm going to plan my activities accordingly. But if it doesn't rain, then so that is the accuracy of forecasting. You need to know that what will be the value of that particular variable, price or demand, and how much is going to be the variation in that value that we call as error, right? So will it going to be close? So it gives you a very accurate idea about the next hour price or next hour demand. Okay, now if we talk about electricity demand or electricity price, then what makes electricity a variable which is very different from other market variables? The first thing is that the electricity cannot be stored. I cannot store electricity. Like for any other market commodity, for example, if you're talking about say onions, we know that the onions price will go up in the coming few weeks or coming few days. Then what you can do is you can store onions, you can buy onion and you can keep it at your home at a lower cost so that you can use it when the prices are very high. But with electricity, it's not possible. You cannot store electricity. So the prices and the demand have to be in real time. They need to be balanced in the real time. Then seasonal behavior, there is a issue with the transportability, right? It is not like if the prices in the north goes up, then you can bring more electricity from the south and you can deliver it to north. No, it's not going to happen because there are some transmission constraints which are there, and then there is a generation and distribution kind of stability that you need to maintain. And the last thing is volatility. So all these things make electricity as a commodity very different from the other commodities that we buy and sell in the markets. For example, you can think about shares, you can think about any commodity, you can think of that can sell in the market. So electricity as a commodity is very different from all other commodities. These are the factors which, in fact, these are the factors which govern the electricity price. They are power demand, weather condition, cost of the fuel, available transmission capacity, and generation reserves. So I've already told you that these factors we need to consider while doing the price forecasting, but the impact of all these factors is not same, right? So you cannot say that the availability of transmission capacity will impact the future price in the same way as the electrical power demand. No. So all these factors are going to affect the price of the electricity, but in a different manner, right? So some are going to affect it more and some are going to affect in a lesser way. So we need to decide that what are the important factors that we need to consider while going for the price forecasting. While we go for the price forecasting in the next few minutes or next few hours. These are the types of price forecasting. We divide them according to the time horizon. So we can say that it's a short time forecasting, medium term forecasting, or long term forecasting. And all of these types have got different use. So short term forecasting is normally done in a day ahead time. That means we normally forecast for 24 hours, and it is used to share the profit of the participants in the spot market. Spot market means a market where there are buyers and sellers that go for purchasing the electricity and selling the electricity on a day-to-day basis. Then you have got medium-term forecasting. So these forecasts are necessary for successful negotiations of bilateral contracts between the supplier and consumers. And then last one is long-term forecasting. So long-term forecasting means a forecasting which is for more than 6 months or a year or so. So they normally deal with the generation capacity, how you're going to augment the generation capacity, distribution planning, and regional energy exchange, right? So, and all of these require different models, right? It is not like the same model can be used for short-term forecasting and medium and long-term, no, because all of these will have different factors that will influence the price. Like short-term forecasting is mainly influenced by two things, that is weather and the demand in a much more way, and the weather in India doesn't change in that rapid manner, but in Western countries it do changes, right? So for morning, if you wake up, the sun is there, the day is bright and sunny, but by evening it started to, it started to rain, or the weather goes down suddenly, there is a snowfall. Now what happens when there is a sudden decline in the weather conditions? The load go up, the demand goes up because people start using their heaters. So in that case, the electricity price changes within few hours because the demand changes in few hours. Similarly, medium-term forecasting, when you're doing it for a longer duration, say for 3 months to 6 months, and even up to a year for design that bilateral contracts, there are some other influential variables that you need to consider, that what are the different factors that will influence the medium-term forecasting. Similarly, long-term forecasting will be affected by various other factors other than your demand and weather. Suppose if a new, like you must have seen in your cities, that now the expansion is taking place in the outskirts areas. The colonies are now coming up in the outer of the outskirts of the city boundaries. So once you are having a colonies which are now coming up in the outskirts, you need to decide that how we are going to increase the generation. What will be the increase in demand in the future? Because if you have got 4 or 5 colonies which are now coming up, you need to supply them electricity. You need to plan the distribution beforehand. So this is how you go for long-term forecasting. So I've told you that the price forecasting can also be distributed in terms of time horizon. So they can be distributed in short term, medium term, long term. Which in some of the books, you must see that very short term forecasting is also there, right? But broadly, we can classify them into these 3 types, and each of these types is associated with a different kind of decision that we take in power system. Volatility, I have already told you that there is a sudden increase in the price, or there is a sudden decline in the price within a short span of time. That is what we call as volatility. If you can compare the typical values of volatility, then you can say that stock markets had got volatility of about 1 to 1.5%. Individual stocks has got volatility of about less than 4%. Bonds, crude oil, and electricity markets, you can see in the last, it has got volatility which can be as high as up to 50%, right? So you can see that if we design a method, if we design a technique which is there for forecasting the prices of a stock, say for stock market, then the same method cannot be applied to the electricity market because of the very high volatility. Right. So this is just to make a differentiation, that what is the difference between the electricity as a commodity and other commodities which are present in the market. Is that clear, guys? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Am I
yes, sir.
audible?
It's
Because,
clear.
okay.
Yeah, yes, sir. You're audible.
So now, in order to forecast the electricity price, we have started with the very basic models, first we have tried to implement the artificial neural network model. Artificial neural network I need not to explain, because I think by now we all know it. It's a black box which can function the any nonlinear function on its own, and it can provide you the output. We can train it to provide the output according to the input that we have presented, right? Now, the first important part is that we need to select the proper neural network structure or architecture. So there are various architectures that are being discussed in literature for forecasting the electricity price or electricity demand, right? So we have taken the simple artificial neural network structure, what we call as MLP, multi-layer perceptron, right? So after deciding the neural network architecture, the next important thing is to decide the input variables. What will be the input variables that we need to provide to the artificial neural network? Because those input variables will actually govern the future electricity price. So we need to consider the variables very appropriately. We need to make the correct choice of input variables. So in this case, we have taken the previous demand, current demand, and previous electricity price, time of the day, and day of the week as the variables to be given to the artificial neural network that we have considered. So why we have taken the load and the price both as the input variables is because of this correlation graph. That data that we have considered is for two markets, two electricity markets, that is New South Wales in Australia and PJM in US, that is Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. So you can see that there is a high correlation among the price and the load. So because of this high correlation between the price, electricity price, and electric load, we have considered both price and load as the input variable. Same we have plotted it for PGM as well, right? Okay, guys. Okay, now what we have done is we have transformed the input series, because as I've told you that the price series is not stationary, so we need to make it stationary by using certain mathematical tools. And moreover, it is volatile, so it contains some outliers. What are outliers? Outliers are actually values which are there, which are not in the normal range of that particular series because of the volatility. So what we have used is we have used the wavelet transform to transform the series into the approximate and detailed series. And why wavelet transform? Because it gives you the information for both time and frequency which we require. Because Fourier transforms only gives you the information about the time. So this is how the wavelet transform looks like. So we have done the kurtosis analysis to know the level of decomposition of this MATLAB. Right. In this case, we have used 3 level of decomposition. That means we are going to have 1 approximate series and 3 detailed series. And this is called as multi-resolution analysis. That means the signal is divided into high frequency and low frequency signals. So you take a high frequency component and you take the low frequency component that defines the signal. So let me just show you that. So based on this Kurtosis and Skroning analysis, we have calculated the order of the mother wavelet and the level. In this work, we have considered Daubichy's as the mother wavelet. So there are other mother wavelets as well. Haar is there, Morlet is there, because these wavelets are from orthogonal series of wavelets. So we have used Daubichy's in this particular work. So this is how we have done the analysis. So is the figure visible?
Yes, sir.
Your figure is visible.
Okay. So the S actually represents the original signal here, and this A1, A2, A3 represents the approximate series, and D1, D2, D3 represents the detail series. So if you just look at A3 and D3, then you can find that A3 is somewhat similar to the original series, right? And if you look at A4, you see that the signal has now become distorted. So what we see that at this fourth level of decomposition, the most of the information that is contained in the series is lost. So we choose it on the basis that if you look at A3, then it is more close to the original signal, and it contains most of the information which is there in the original signal. So we have gone for 3 level of decomposition, and the correspondingly you have got D1, D2 and D3. Again, selection of mother wavelet, I have already told you that why we have gone for this. So these are the input variables that we have taken for the neural network, where T represents the time slot of the day, DOW represents the day of the week, and then P represents the price, and this 24, 47, 48 means the hours. So it's 24 hours before price, then 47 hours before price, 48 hours before price, 49, and so on. So a week before and so on. So we take the price, previous value of the price or historical value of the price, and their D represents the demand. So we have taken historical price and historical demand into consideration. In this particular work, then we have made some advanced models as well currently, and then we have considered the value of temperature and other variables which are related to the weather. Okay, so this is how the network looks like. So we have given all these inputs to the wavelet transform. So wavelet transform has produced, because of 3 level of decomposition, they have produced an approximate series and 3 detail series that we have converted into time domain. This is in the both time and frequency domain, right? After the conversion of wavelet transform, then by taking inverse wavelet transform, we have converted it back in the time domain. And when we have given these inputs to the individual ANNs, and we have forecasted the price. Ultimately, what we have done, we have actually submitted the output of all the ANNs because they are in time domain. So we have just make the summation so that we get the future electricity price. So by this, we have used the artificial neural network for obtaining the electricity price. So the variations that we have done is we have actually used different training methods to see that what will be the impact of training methods on different ANNs. So we have done a comparison that with different training methods, how the training capacity of artificial neural network or the prediction accuracy of the artificial neural network changes. Again, when you say about AI tools or when you talk about artificial neural networks, so it is basically based on 2 things. First is that we do everything experimentally. We decide everything experimentally. We do it by ourselves. And second thing is that we call as trial and error. So what is trial and error? We keep on trying the things. We try different learning algorithms. We try different learning rates and so on. And we need to visualize that how the result is improving. Right. So this is again the comparison of the training methods with respect to the forecasted price, how the different algorithms are following it. So the proposed method that you can see, which is shown by a black dotted line in a circle, which is actually following the electricity price closely. So we have chosen this particular training method, which is this training 3, CGP. Right. So once we have decided on the training method, we have plotted this regression plot, and the regression plot we have done for the training, testing, validation, and target everything. And this should be close to 1, because if the regression is close to 1, that means that your network is fit in a better way, right? Because since it is not close to 1, so we have tried one more thing, which is we have optimized the, this is actually the forecasted and actual curve of electricity price using the artificial neural network. I'm not going to go in detail with this, the results. I'm going to show you the next thing, which is the optimization of NN weights. So we know that the neural networks are generally defined by three different layers, that is input layer, output layer, and hidden layer, and there are neurons in all the three layers. So, and the neurons are connected by something that we call as links, and each link has been given a weight that we call as synaptic weight. So synaptic weights in artificial neural networks are generally taken in a random manner, right? And once it trains, it optimizes the weights according to the input, and it gives a higher value to an input which is affecting the output in a better way, and it reduces the weight for the input which is not going to affect the output. So in this case, we have also used an algorithm to optimize the neural network weights, right? So there are a lot of optimization algorithms which are available in the literature, but for this particular work, we have taken algorithm which is environment adaptation method or improved environment adaptation method. It is being designed by one of the faculties of MNIT itself, and he got it published for this different benchmark conditions as well. So this algorithm actually helped in optimizing the neural network weights. So I don't think I'll explain this, because if you want this algorithm or you won't have any question related to this algorithm, you can ask me. Right. So what we have done, we have input the neural network weights in a random manner. We have taken the random neural network weights, and we have given these weights as an initial population to the algorithm. Yeah, I think this is clear to you, because in optimization, what we do is we give a random population to the optimization algorithm so that it can optimize. And there are three operators that IEM works on. Right, so there are three different operators which calculates the fitness value. Now, after getting the output of the IEM, we have checked that whether we are able to reduce the error function or not. If it is able to reduce the error function, we have taken the output of this particular algorithm as the weights of the neural network. If not, then we have again gone back to the process and we have repeated it. So these are the results that we have got with the optimization of neural network, and different algorithms that we have tried to make a comparison that how the different algorithms are affecting the overall forecasting process. Okay guys, so this brings me to the next model that we have used. Is it clear till what I've explained? Hello?
Pardon, sir?
Is it clear? Shall I move forward?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so artificial neural network has got their own limitations that stops it from being used for several applications, right? So what we have done is, first we have done for it ANN, then we have optimized the weights of ANN, and upon getting the results, we have find that it is not able to give us the satisfactory results. So we have moved on to another model, which is generalized neuron model. So what it does, it is actually, it replaces the complete neural network by a single neuron, right? So the neural network actually, because of its structure or architecture, you can say that it is the problem with the artificial neural network, that it gets stuck in the local optima. So sometimes it is not able to give you the results which are good enough to be considered as final results. So again, we have taken an advanced model, which is generalized neural network. So generalized neural model is nothing, but it is actually a single neuron in which there are two different parts, which we call as sigma part and the pi part. And each of these parts is actually having a different activation function. So now instead of a network, we are having a single neuron. right? And in the last, we do the summation of all these parts, and we get the output of the neuron. So we give all the inputs, and there are sigma part and pi part. And the sigma part has the activation function, which is sigmoidal activation function, and the pi part is given the Gaussian activation function. And finally, the output of these two parts are summated by which is represented by this summation function. And finally, we get the output of this. So this is how we write the output of this particular neuron. It is W sigma, that is the weight of the sigma part into the output of sigma part, plus, since these two weights will be equal to 1, the summation of these two weights will be equal to 1. So either we can call it as W pi, or we can also write it as 1 minus the weights of the sigma part into the output of pi part. So this is the equation that defines the output of the neuron. This is the learning algorithm. So I'm not going to discuss the learning algorithm. If you want, then maybe we can have a discussion on this. You can discuss it with me. But in this case, we have taken the sum squared error as the function, right? As the error function. So what this error function does is, you actually try to minimize the error. So what you do, you calculate the output, then you find out that what is the sum squared error, which is the difference between the actual and the desired. So the difference between the actual value and the desired value is what we call as error. And instead of taking this error in a simple way, we take the sum squared error, yani ki we make the summation of this error and we take the square of it. So that is what we take as the error function normally for training the neural network. And once we take this, then we've calculated that what is the output. But now what we have done is we have changed this error function. So instead of taking the sum squared error as an error function, we have considered these as the error function. So there are different error functions which are available in the literature. So there are sum squared error that people normally consider. Then there are Fahlman error function, entropy error function, Hamlet error function, and hyperbolic error function. And we have seen that all these error functions actually do have an impact on the output of the generalized neuron model that we are considering. So we have compared these error functions, and this is the graph that we have plotted with number of iterations. And what we have seen is that the hyperbolic error function is a function which is coming to the optimized value in a less number of iterations, right? So we have, instead of considering the sum square error function, we have taken hyperbolic error function as a function which will govern the output of the generalized neuron model, right? So with the less number of iteration and optimal value, we have taken this hyperbolic error function. Then we have compared the output of generalized neuron model based on the different error functions, and we have compared it with sum square error function to see that how closely they follow the forecasted price, the actual price. These are the outputs. Okay, guys. So the last network that we have considered is the network which is based on adaptive resonance theory, right? So what is adaptive resonance theory is the normal neural networks are basically having a problem that we call as stability plasticity dilemma, that you can see it is in red color. What is this stability plasticity dilemma? Stability means that they need to retain the input and output mapping that they have already learned. And what is plasticity? Plasticity is, that means with that learning, they need to learn something new. But what happens that over a period of time, or with large number of input variables or large number of input patterns and the output patterns which are being given to the network, it becomes plastic. That means it is not able to learn the new things. That means there is no change in the output with the change in the input. That means the learning process comes to a halt. So in order to overcome the dilemma of stability and plasticity that normally occurs in the artificial neural network structure, the scientists have produced something, or scientists have suggested something which we call as adaptive resonance theory. That means they have produced a network which overcomes the issue of stability plasticity that we normally see in the artificial neural network. Right. So we have used this adaptive resonance theory in our work to see that how it improves the overall forecasting performance. So again, there are various adaptive resonance theory networks. You can find it in the literature, that is ART1, ART2, ART3, and so on. Then fuzzy art, fusion art, and the last one is fuzzy art map, which is now mostly used. So I've used this fuzzy art map for my work, which is the use of fuzzy along with this adaptive resonance theory. So what is the execution, how this adaptive resonance theory network is executed? First thing, that the input pattern is presented to the network, and if the input pattern which is presented is same to the already existing or stored patterns, then the new variables that are presented with along with the input patterns are updated. That means there is an updation in the already stored patterns, and a category is not formed. That means in long-term memory there exists a category. So with the new artificial neural network or new input patterns, there is updation in that particular category. And if the input variable is not same, that means the input variable is different, then it forms a new category. So this is how the learning in the case of adaptive resonance theory take place. And this formation of new category or the updation of the old category which is existing is being controlled by something that we call as vigilance parameter. So this is how the fuzzy art map architecture looks like. So as you can see that there are two networks which are denoted as adaptive resonance theory A or ART A and ART B. So for ART A, the input pattern is given, and for ART B, the target is given. So that is input output matching. That means you give the input as well as the target. Now for this input and output target to match, there is something that we call as map field. This map field, what it does is it maps whether this input and target variables has already been presented to the network or not. If it is presented earlier as well, then what it does is it simply takes the additional feature that this input and target variable contains and stores it in the long-term memory. If this input and target vector is not presented earlier, then what it does is it creates a new category in the memory and stores this input and output target there. So once this storing is take place, there is a change in the value of rho, which signifies that how the vigilance parameter is changing. So if the network is presented with the input and target earlier, then the value of rho will be low. And if the input and the target variable is not similar, that means they are new, then the value of rho will become high. So that high value of rho indicates that the network is learning. It is actually storing the corresponding input and target vector in forming a new category. So this is how the concept of input and output matching takes place in the fuzzy art map architecture. So this is how we have given the inputs and the output. So we have given the input price data. Again, same thing, we have used a wavelet decomposition, reconstruction, and given it to the fuzzy art map network. And we have set the vigilance parameter. Now this vigilance parameter is being modified or is being optimized by using the algorithm that we have used to optimize the weights of the artificial neural network, right? And this vigilance parameters actually governs the learning process, right? So we see that if there is a change in the vigilance parameter, then the learning has taken place or not. If the learning takes place, then we update the weight vectors. If the learning doesn't take place, then again it goes back and it again changes the initial input vectors, right? So in this case, we have only transformed the price series and we have not transformed the load series. You can see that the wavelet decomposition is only done for the input price series data, but it is not done for the input load or the demand data. Why? Because we have seen that the volatility is only present in the price data. It is not present in the load data. Again, this is a algorithm which defines that how we have done the forecasting, how the parameters are given to the fuzzy ArtMap model, and how does the learning takes place. Right, so there are three parameters that defines the complete process of fuzzy ArtMap. They are choice parameters, learning parameters, and vigilance parameters that I have already explained. So we need to decide all these parameters in a random way in the beginning, and then with the help of this optimization algorithm, they are brought to a value which is optimized. This is the vigilance criteria, that how the category will be formed, and this is how this particular equation tells you about that how the weights will be modified based on the new pattern being presented. So this will depend upon the value of this beta. So this will decide whether the learning is slow or fast. What is B? It is the learning parameter that will control the learning process of the network. So these are the value of the different parameters that we have choosing in the training phase, and the performance phase is actually the forecasting phase. First we train the network and then we use it for forecasting the actual values. These are the input variables that are being given to the network. Again, wavelet transform using Dobbechi's function, level 3 decomposition. So you have got one approximate series and 3 detailed series, right? This is how the network looks like, or this is a block diagram of the work that we have done. These are the results. So we have seen that by use of this fuzzy ArtMap method, the results that we have obtained are much better than the earlier two models that we have used, which is artificial neural network and the generalized neural model, right? So this is the overall conclusion. These are the results. So thank you guys. So I'll just sum up that what is the conclusion. The conclusion is that we are taking, suppose if we are taking any problem, then we can't say that the same artificial neural network model will work best. Suppose if we are taking the data of any particular country and we are applying it to a ANN model, then we cannot say that the same model will also work for the different countries. Suppose if we are taking the load and price data of India and we are now using the same model to be applied it to the country, say Sri Lanka or Pakistan, then the same model will not work, because the data will have its own variability, the data will have its own flexibility, there is a volatility which will be considered, so the network may behave differently. So what we need to do is we need to change the network, we need to make it adaptable to the problem or the data that we are dealing with, right? So we need to fine tune the network. So there are some parameters we need to fine tune in the MATLAB function. We need to change that what will be the input variables, how much hidden layers should be there, how many neurons should be there in hidden layers, what should be the learning rate, and so on. So these all parameters that we fine tune the network, that are used for fine tuning of the artificial neural network, they are not specific. We cannot say that they are generalized, right? They are dependent upon the kind of problem that we are dealing with. Even I can say that if I'm using a network for load forecasting or for demand forecasting, the same network I cannot use for price forecasting. I need to fine tune the network. I need to define the architecture again um, along the way for the problem itself, for the specific problem that I am dealing with. Secondly, there are a lot of architectures which are available in the literature. Even I have discussed 3 architectures in this particular presentation. So we can say that you cannot say that there is one architecture which is working best. No. For artificial intelligence techniques, you cannot say that there is one algorithm or there is one architecture which works the best for forecasting. No. There could be different architectures which will give you different results, right? And you can tune them according to your problem, and they might give good results to you. So that is why we say that the research in the field of AI is not saturating, because people are coming up with new and new ways. They have a different perspective of looking at the problem, and they can decide that which uh, network or which architecture they want to use for their problem. Right, so there is no hard and fast rule that this particular architecture, if it has worked for this particular problem, then the same architecture will also work from me. No, it is not like that. And that is why you have several algorithms or several architectures which are now being presented by the researchers. Same goes for the optimization algorithm. Earlier there was PSO, then there are several variants of PSO, then ant colony, and so many swarm optimization techniques that you can see. Evolutionary computing, every day a new algorithm is being presented. Why? Because they see that the algorithms are improving upon the problems in some way. The different algorithms are affecting the problems in different manner. So what I'll suggest is that whenever you are working with artificial intelligence techniques for this particular area that I'm dealing with, which is forecasting or power system planning, then you need to consider, first thing is the data. The data should be appropriately selected. Second is influential factors that should be appropriately selected. You should know that if I'm dealing with price, what will be the influential factors, how I can increase the number of input patterns. But again, there is the condition of optimality. If you increase the number of input parameters, if you increase the number of hidden layers, if you increase the number of neurons, then the network becomes slower. So you need to be optimal in selecting that how many input parameters you should be selecting for your network. What are the influential factors that you should be considering, right? Then the pre-processing of the data, because the data that you take is normally from say any market or SCADA system. Then you need to remove the bad data. You need to work on the data itself. You need to see that the data that you are presenting to the network is pre-processed so that network can generalize it properly. Then fourth is definitely the selection of the tools that you are going to use, the selection of architecture. So there are a lot of architectures available. You need to decide that which architecture you normally want to use for the kind of problem that you are dealing with. What I'll suggest is that it's best if you compare 2 or 3 architectures, because then you get a clear-cut idea that by comparing these architectures, which architecture is providing me the better results for my kind of problem, the problem that I'm dealing with. Then finally, you get the solution, you compare the solution with the existing models, you compare the solution with the solution provided by the other researchers, and then you see that whether the network that you have used is getting you good results or not. So thank you, that's all from my side. If there are any questions, I'm ready to take.
Thank you, sir. Now the platform is open for audience to ask the query if they have.
Can I stop sharing?
Yes, sir.